Was Jesus a real person? Did Jesus Christ really exist? Or is Christianity a legend built upon a fictitious character, like Harry Potter? In his early years as an atheist Oxford literary scholar, C.S. Lewis considered Jesus a myth. But after an atheist friend stated that the evidence for Jesus was really good, Lewis began to investigate the truth for himself. He writes about his search for the truth about Jesus in his classic book, Mere Christianity. So, what evidence did Lewis discover for Jesus Christ's existence? And how does it compare with other great men of history, such as Alexander the Great? All world historians acknowledge the following facts about Alexander the Great. In 336 BC, Alexander became king of Macedonia. He conquered Greco-Persia and reportedly cried when there were no more worlds to conquer. But what convinces historians that Alexander the Great actually existed? The history of Alexander is drawn from 5 ancient sources written 300 or more years after he died. At that late date, none of these writings are eyewitness accounts. Historians believe Alexander really existed, largely because the accounts of his life are confirmed by archaeology and his impact on history. So how does the historical record for Jesus Christ compare with that of Alexander the Great? We will examine the evidence for Jesus from archaeology and ancient writings. Finally, we will look at Jesus' impact on history. Archaeologists have discovered numerous places and relics that agree with the New Testament accounts of Jesus. Prior to the 20th century, no archaeological evidence existed for the Roman governor Pontius Pilate and the Jewish chief priest Caiaphas, who were central figures in the crucifixion of Christ. However, in 1961, archaeologists discovered a block of limestone inscribed with the name of Pontius Pilate, prefect of Judea. And in 1990, archaeologists discovered an ossuary, bone box, with the inscription of Caiaphas. It has been verified as authentic beyond a reasonable doubt. Next, we need to examine the early historians who didn't have a Christian agenda, but confirmed Jesus as a real person. Although the early Jews were Jesus' enemies, they always regarded him as real. Several Jewish writings refer to Jesus as a real person whom they opposed. Noted Jewish and later Roman historian Flavius Josephus wrote of James, the brother of Jesus, the so-called Christ. Josephus also writes of Jesus' crucifixion and his disciples' belief in his resurrection. Two contemporary Roman historians, Tacitus and Suetonius, write of Jesus as a real person. In AD 112, the magistrate Pliny wrote to the emperor Trajan of his attempts to force Christians to renounce Christ, whom they worshipped as a god. Also, emperors Trajan, AD 56 to 117, and Hadrian, AD 76 to 136, wrote about Christians as followers of Jesus. In total, 9 early non-Christian secular writers mention Jesus as a real person within 150 years of his death. The same number of secular writers who mention Tiberius Caesar, the Roman emperor during Jesus' time. If we were to consider Christian and non-Christian sources, there are 42 who mention Jesus, compared to just 10 for Tiberius. According to the Encyclopedia Britannica, these independent accounts prove that in ancient times, even the opponents of Christianity never doubted the historicity of Jesus. Jesus' existence has been documented by over 36,000 non-biblical writings of early Christians that could virtually reconstruct the entire New Testament. Cambridge historian Michael Grant, an atheist, argues that the New Testament should be considered as evidence in the same way as other ancient history. William Albright dated all the New Testament books between about AD 50 and AD 75. Such early dating means they were written when eyewitnesses were alive, much too early for a myth or legend to develop. The quantity of manuscripts for the New Testament is enormous. Over 24,000 complete or partial manuscript copies of its books exist, putting it far above all other ancient documents. Historian Paul Johnson remarks, "If we consider that Tacitus, for example, survives in only one medieval manuscript, the quantity of early New Testament manuscripts is remarkable." Perhaps the greatest evidence that Jesus really existed is that his life and words have changed our world more than any other historical person. More books have been written about Jesus than about any other person in history. Over 100 great universities, including Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Dartmouth, Columbia, and Oxford, were founded by his followers. Jesus' teaching about the value of human life has led to the abolishment of slavery, as well as the equality of women. When noted author and world historian H.G. Wells was asked who has left the greatest legacy on history, he replied, "By this test, Jesus stands first." World historian William Durant notes that no Jew or Gentile from the first century ever denied the existence of Jesus. After 20 centuries of historical investigation, the evidence is overwhelming that not only did Jesus exist, but he is the most significant person of all time. To learn more, go to why-jesus.com/evidence and download the free book, Who is the Real Jesus?